look into the book of Joshua, starting in the book of Joshua. Like I said, I got several notes this morning, so hopefully they all come together and make a little sense this morning. So looking in the book of Joshua, I'm not sure who needs to hear this message tonight or this morning, but we've already talked about it in Sunday school. We already sang about it, and now we're going to hear a message about it. So evidently, somebody needs to hear this morning. No doubt, I'm sure a large portion of it is myself that needs to hear it. But maybe perhaps it's applicable in your life as well. You know, sometimes I guess as I'm going through the day-to-day things, I'll think about particular things that maybe I picked up on or maybe I learned, and I'll tend to jot them down or save them in my phone or type them out in my phone and save them just to reflect on later, or perhaps if y'all are unfortunate enough to stand up here at a later time, to perhaps share some points or some things that I've learned or some things that I've worked on or I've noticed in my life that I need to work on. And perhaps it's applicable with you as well. So I'll ask you a question. Have you ever felt in life as if you're just like at times going through the motions maybe? That you look up and it's been 5, 10, 20 years down the line, and you think to yourself, where has this time gone? In my life, over that time span, what really have been the key points, or what really have been the things that I contributed, or the things that I've changed, or the difference that I made? What really have shown to be my priorities in that time frame? Where have I invested my time? Where have I invested the relationships, the friendships, the people I come across each and every day? What difference have I made in those time frames? And sometimes it's a sobering thought to think of maybe the missed opportunities, or the opportunities that maybe we didn't feel the full potential that we had. And whenever I was thinking about this, of maybe the going through the motion of life, or doing the same things over and over, the story of the Israelites came to my mind. The story of the Israelites, as they left Egypt, they've been in for 400 years, and their journey and what the steps they went through, and the portion of the time that they spent in the wilderness came to mind. And that ultimately led me to this text in Joshua, the first chapter of Joshua. So after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan into the land I'm about to give them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert of Lebanon, from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. And as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful in whatever you do or wherever you go. Do not let the book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? Do not be terrified, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So Joshua ordered the officers of the people to go through the camp and tell the people to get your supplies ready. 3 days from now you will cross the Jordan here to go in and to take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you for your own. But to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and to the half tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the command that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you. The Lord your God is giving you the rest and has granted you this land. Your wives and your children and your livestock may stay in the land Moses gave you to the east of the Jordan, but all of your fighting men, fully armed, must cross over ahead of your brothers. You are to help your brothers until the Lord gives them rest, as He's done for you, and until they have taken possession of the land that the Lord your God has given them. After that, you may go back and occupy the land, your own land, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, has given you to the east of the Jordan toward the sunrise. We'll go this morning to God in prayer. Lord, thanks for this day. The Lord, thank you for this opportunity to be here, the Lord. Just please be with each one here today, the Lord. Each family is represented, the Lord. Just please use this time to bring nothing but glory to you, the Lord. Just please prepare the word and prepare each heart in order to hear it, the Lord. Just again, thank you for all your many blessings. In Jesus' name, amen. When we go through this text today, I would like for you to reflect and consider where you are on your own journey with God. Of the 15 verses that I just read in the first chapter of Joshua, was there something that stood out to you in those verses? Right towards the end of those verses, starting with verse 10, there was 3 specific groups that had land, or had a different land that was on the east of the Jordan River. And it speaks to, in those verses, an agreement that was had with Moses for these people. Now, if you want to refer back to Numbers chapter 32, it speaks about these people coming to Moses in this land. And I'll basically paraphrase, like I said, if you would like to refer back for yourself, it's Numbers chapter 32 where it speaks about this. So basically these 2.5 tribes came to this land that was just to the east of the Jordan. Before the Israelites were to cross over, as mentioned in the first part of Joshua, into the promised land, to cross the Jordan, these 3 tribes that came to this portion of land, and they found this portion of land was good for grazing. It was a prosperous land. And these tribes came to Moses and basically said that it was a fertile and good, perfect for grazing and pastures for their flock. But technically, it was still considered part of the wilderness. and not of the promised land. So basically, what they were saying to Moses was, we'd rather stay here. This has got everything that we need, and we don't want to go to the trouble to cross over and possess something we haven't seen yet. But what resonated with me, or what I thought about as I was reading this, and this text and this message I was putting together, was how sometimes we become content in where we're at. Even though maybe God has promised us more in our lives, how we become content in the wilderness or in the world that we live in and where we're at in our relationship. Is there some truth to that in our lives today? And the promises that God had made all of us, have we become content in where we're at? I know it's tough to think about, but have we become content in the wilderness as well? You'll see in Numbers chapter 32 that basically Moses discouraged the tribes because he was afraid that it would discourage the Israelites from proceeding forward. This ultimately what happened years prior when the spies was sent forward, and it basically led to the wandering around for 40 years in the wilderness. Moses later agreed with this compromise for the people, but basically insisted that they move forward and help fight for the promised land as well. Maybe because he knew that everyone had a right to choose the level of life that they're going to live for themselves. See, even God gave us that option, a choice in life. Sometimes we wonder why, maybe at times, but that choice is what truly reveals our heart towards Him. He didn't want us to be as robots or be forced in any manner. He wanted to see our hearts, our commitment to Him. I even wrote down the theme from our Bible school, our Sunday school book this morning. It says, God's promise was conditional in our obedience. These tribes, these 2.5 tribes, tied themselves to the wilderness, desiring the wilderness more than God's promises. How will we know if we're following in their footsteps ourselves? I think this is a very important part because I believe far too many have come up short of God's promises, being content with the wilderness that they're in. As I said previously, God Himself gives us this choice in life. We are free to make all our own decisions in life. So a couple points I want to bring out this morning, or a couple questions I want to ask. Have we ourselves compromised? To compromise is to make a certain concession to achieve a desired end. There are both good and bad compromises. What makes a bad compromise is when we enter a situation we know it is wrong. The Apostle James says, to him who knows to do good and does it not, to him is a sin. Have we made compromises in our life, in our walk with Jesus? These three tribes worked out such a compromise. They get what they wanted, the land east of the Jordan River, but a land never promised to them by God. The height of their compromise was when they said they would obey Joshua as long as it went along with their own desires. Have we said, God, we know what you have promised, but this looks good to me. This is what I want. Or do we look and try to justify things to ourselves by saying, look how far that I've gone, look all the things that I've done. I deserve this, or I deserve this time, or I deserve some happiness, or I deserve this or that. We make such compromises when we start trying to make deals with God. But God wants us to enter into His promise. And that means obeying His commands. When we make such compromises, we're saying things like, Lord, I'll give you this tithe when I get out of debt. Or perhaps whenever I get that raise at work. Or Lord, you know how hard it is for me to share my faith, so let my life be my witness instead. Or Lord, when my children grow up, then or once this season of my life is over, then Lord, you know I don't have the time, but here, let me give this money instead. These are nothing more than compromises. Us trying to make a deal with God so we don't have to follow through. And instead of helping us enter the promises of God, these compromises lead us back into our own wildernesses of life. So not just have we compromised, has contentment set in our lives. Contentment is basically being satisfied with what we have and wanting nothing else. While contentment can be a virtue, like the Apostle Paul said, no matter what the situation may be, he had learned to be content. That's found in Philippians 4 and 11 and 12. It can also be a detriment in our lives. The type of commitment I'm referring to is when we get content with where we are as Christians and not using the gifts or the talent God has given us. The tribes, the 2.5 tribes that was brought out before, was satisfied with where they were. The land provided everything they needed, and it had everything they wanted. They had no need for anything else, even though what they wanted was far from what God had planned for them, was far from the abundance, from the best that God could offer them. When I read this or think about this, I think about how much we have today. How much we have in our day-to-day lives. I mean, we got nice houses, nice roofs over our head, air-conditioned houses, nice refrigerators for storage. We have an abundance of food. We often throw out leftovers because we don't want to deal with them. We feed our dogs leftovers. We have nice jobs to meet our needs. We somehow have extensive hobbies where we spend a lot of our time and commit the back and forth. We have TVs in each of our room, and there's no telling how much time that those consume our time. And a thought came to my mind, would my life be different if I lived in a remote place? Meaning, not just the day-to-day things, but would my life be different as in the relationship that I had with God if I lived in a more remote place? Would I have more time to dedicate to God? Would I have more time to read His Bible? Would I invest more in the relationships of people around me if I had more time? If I wasn't distracted as much as I am today? Would I have more time, or would I be more concerned with people that are around me, the relationships that I had, the opportunities that I had to come to church, or to go witness to other people, to invest in other people's lives, to share more things? Honestly, I believe I would. Because I'm fortunate enough to have gone to those places and seen that in the people there. So oftentimes we think, we're going to this mission trip or things that we can offer people, and that's just the reason that we probably need to go there ourselves. Because truth be told, oftentimes we get more out of those trips than we give. It's a humbling reality whenever you realize that you've grown content or that you made compromises. How's it with you? You see, God hasn't changed. He's everywhere. He's available to everybody. He's the same today as He was 100, 200, 2,000 years ago. He has not changed. Have we changed? How can we tell if such contentment is happening in our lives? When someone asks us to volunteer and we have the ability and the time and we find reasons or excuses not to because we're too comfortable or it might be a little inconvenient. However, Jesus gives us an example of how to prevent this from happening. He took up a towel and washed His disciples' feet and then says, we're to do the same thing. That is, to be servants to one another. Paul said we are to bear one another's burdens in Galatians 6. To be a servant bearing one another's burdens means we got to get out of our comfort zones. We must move out of those areas that are holding us to our own wildernesses and to move to those areas God is calling us to take. I know I've shared this story many times, but one of the things that made a huge impact to me was when I was in Brazil. It's probably been 10 or 11 years ago now. Of all the things that happened, it was just a simple thing that happened. I was sitting in a car with a young girl. I say young girl, she was probably 30 at the time. And we went to somebody's house, and we just was filling in, avoiding time between people's appointed times. And we went to one of their friends' house. And from what I picked up of the conversation, not being very good about Portuguese or anything like that, but what I picked up from is more or less this person had been in the church or was very close friends to a lot of the people that were kind of there, that was organizing all this stuff, had been really close, but had recently started doing things that they didn't approve of. And that, as we were sitting there, that girl was so concerned about her friend that she began to cry as the pastor of the church was trying to go talk to that friend to let us talk to him about everything that was going on. And evidently it was taking longer, and she was afraid. She was so concerned about her friend that she began to cry. And at first I didn't know what was going on. She was crying over there in the seat, and I thought something else was wrong. But as the conversation went on between me and her in the broken English and the broken Spanish or Portuguese, I finally understood why she was crying. And I thought to myself, when is the last time I have shed a tear for somebody that I loved or cared about in that manner? Not that they were like dying and this was their last chance or something like that, but being so concerned about their life and their relationship with God and where they stood that I shed a tear. And it's crazy to think of how God can use situations like that to be so profound. Of the 100 things that happened during that trip, that's one of the things that I remember vividly was just that simple act of obedience. And that's, again, God's promise was conditional to our own obedience. Yes, it's easier to say yes, it is easier to stay where we are because doing those things will stretch us, will mean a sacrifice. But God is not calling us to take up our conveniences and follow Him, but rather He's calling us to take up our crosses, which means dying to our desires and follow Him. And so, have we compromised and allowed contentment to set into our lives? Have you found yourself in either of these categories? Have you compromised, or have you allowed contentment to set in? There's a couple things we can do to alleviate this. Is to step out in faith. God told Joshua to step out in faith and to take the promised land, saying, "Arise, go over the Jordan, you and all these people, to the land that I'm giving you, the children of Israel." And then God told Joshua to be strong and to be of good courage, for the people you shall divide as an inheritance of the land I swore to your fathers to give them. There needs to be a step of faith if we want to enter into a promised land. Now, while the men of these 2.5 tribes did lead the rest of Israel to the promised land, they were not totally committed to the cause. The reason is because they really truly didn't have nothing at stake. Their families, their possessions were kept safely behind. You might say that they had an escape clause in their contract. But if we're honest, I believe there's far many of us doing the same things in our lives. We start to get involved, but not fully. We develop safety nets. If things don't go as we plan, or things gets a little rocky, or if we meet a little bit more resistance than expected, we got our own escape route already mapped out, and we go back to where we were. We need to step fully out in faith into God's promises, and even to do this, we must sever all ties with our own wildernesses in our lives. We must be strong and courageous, and to take these avenues of escape, take out these avenues of escape. I know that's scary, especially when we struggle with things in the past of abuse or lies or trust or deception, abandonment or addictions, but you'll never truly heal until you realize that the only stronghold is God. It's not anything conceived of man. So one, what can you do to step out in faith? And two, you can risk for the Lord. When I think about risking it all, we just discussed this a couple weeks ago here at this church, was Abraham. How he completely left the land that he was in and was willing to risk it all to follow what God had told him. God said to Abraham, get out of your country and from your family and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. In Genesis 12. Abraham risked it all and God blessed him because he stepped out in faith, willing to risk it all for God, and God counted it as righteousness. What I've seen is a lot of opportunities that were missed just out of fear in people's lives. Just because the end was not guaranteed or it wasn't a sure thing or their safety isn't fully assured. Risking it all doesn't automatically mean you have to just get up and leave everything and move to a foreign country, but it may mean speaking out to Christ when He calls for it, even though it may be inconvenient. It may mean getting involved in a ministry or not giving yourself an escape route. It may mean admitting to each other an addiction and being vulnerable for the first time. It may be giving of your resources, or better yet, your time, the way God desires. Will you fully step out in faith and risk it for the Lord? If you're curious and you want to see the end result of these three tribes, it's found in 1 Chronicles verses 25 and 26. Let me read that because I did not write it down. In 1 Chronicles 5, verses 25 and 26, if you want to see the end result, it says, but they were unfaithful to God of their fathers and prostituted themselves out to the gods of the people of the land, whom God had destroyed before them. So the God of Israel stirred up the spirit of Pul king Assyria, who took the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh into exile. He took them to Halah, Harbor, Harah, and to the river of Gozan, where they are to this day. They were one of the first groups of people to be exiled because they were unfaithful to God and followed the gods of the people of the land where they were. There's a basic truth, that is that once we compromise, once we walk away, it becomes easier to do it again. So the question becomes, on what level do we want to live our lives? That chapter in Numbers, chapter 32, provides a pretty clear expectation from the Lord. It basically talks about the Israelites and their half-hearted commitment to God that drove the wandering around for so many years until basically that generation died off. And He only counted the two as being fully committed to Him. several months ago, when I actually wrote down this note, I guess like I alluded to earlier in the message, of things that I write down, it's something that I thought about myself in my life. And honestly, I probably need to hear this sermon more than anybody here. But what I wrote down in my phone that day, and I guess I'm saying it as I'm saying it, but it probably means more like coming from God to me or to everyone here. It's what could I say that would truly make a difference, or that could truly change, or that could truly influence a change in your life today? What could be said today from God that would truly make a difference in your life? As we think about all these things that I previously talked about, what could be said that would truly drive a difference in your life, or truly influence a change in your life? And I want you to think, if you pray for something to God, do you think God, in His infinite knowledge, would just give that to you? I don't personally think so. Something that maybe in this perception that I'm sharing today, I believe that He will give you an opportunity. If you pray for Him about a circumstance or a situation or things that you need or things that I think He'll give you an opportunity. He'll give you an opportunity to trust Him. He'll give you an opportunity to grow. He'll give you an opportunity to sacrifice. He'll give you an opportunity to mature, to learn, to love, to serve. I say that because an opportunity demands a choice. And a choice reveals your true heart and where you're at. And until you're willing to do something different, or until something is really worth it enough to you, there will never really be a true change. And I believe God knows that. You see, He gives us all a choice to make. We can choose to enter a land full of blessings, a land that is promised to us, or we can choose to stay in that wilderness in our lives. Do we, in our choice, say, Lord, I've gone far enough? Or do we say, Lord, I trust you. Lord, I'm here. Send me. The choice is yours this morning. I guess if we'll stand for our closing prayer this morning, I'll ask Dad to dismiss us this morning.